Have you ever really wondered what's going on inside a child's head? I mean, how do they go from just a bundle of reflexes to someone who can solve actual problems? Well, today we're going to unpack exactly that by diving into the revolutionary work of Jean Piaget.
For the longest time, people just assumed that children were basically mini adults, that their brains were just these smaller, empty containers you had to fill up with facts. But Piaget came along and questioned that whole idea. He asked, is that really how it works?
And Piaget's answer was a hard no. He completely flipped that old idea on its head with this one powerful concept. Children are not empty vessels. They are active, curious little scientists. They're constantly out there, running their own experiments, making observations, and literally building their own understanding of how the world works.
Okay, so if a child is a little scientist, then every scientist needs a toolkit, right? Before they can start on their grand journey of discovery, they need some basic mental tools. And that's what we're going to look at first, the absolute foundation of knowledge. The most basic tool in this kit is something Piaget called a schema. The easiest way to think about it is like a mental blueprint, or maybe a little file folder in your brain for a specific concept. So a baby might have a schema for things I can chew on. An older kid might have a schema for dog that includes things like has 4 legs, is furry, and it barks. So how do these little file folders get updated? This slide breaks it down perfectly. Let's start at step 1. A child eats a banana, it's yellow and it's tasty, so they create a schema. Yellow things are tasty. Okay, now step 2, assimilation. You give them a piece of mango. It's yellow, it's tasty, great. It fits perfectly into their existing schema. But then you hit step 3, accommodation. They bite into a yellow lemon. Whoa, that's yellow, but it's definitely not sweet and tasty. That new information doesn't fit, so they're forced to change or accommodate their schema. This constant back and forth is basically learning in a nutshell.
Now, Piaget argued that this whole process of building and changing schemas isn't just a chaotic mess. It actually happens in a pretty predictable sequence across 4 distinct stages. Think of these like the 4 major expeditions on our little scientist journey, and each one has its own unique discoveries and challenges. So our journey kicks off right at birth in what's called the sensory motor stage. This one lasts from day 1 all the way up to about 2 years old. During this stage, it's all about experiencing the world directly through the senses and through actions. So a lot of touching, tasting, looking, and listening. They're building knowledge through basic reflexes and by imitating what they see. But the absolute game changer, the biggest discovery of this whole stage, is something called object permanence. This is that incredible aha moment when a baby finally gets that when you hide your face in peekaboo, you haven't actually blinked out of existence. So, once a child understands that things still exist even when they can't see them, a whole new world opens up. They can start to represent those things in their minds. And that brings us to the pre-operational stage, from about age 2 to 7, where the real magic of symbolic thought begins. This is where kids really start using words and pictures to stand in for real objects. It's also that adorable phase of animism when a child is completely convinced their teddy bear has feelings. But their thinking still has some major limitations. They tend to focus on only one thing at a time, what Piaget called centration, and they can't really reverse a series of steps in their head. And the biggest hurdle of this stage, egocentrism. And this is the perfect illustration of egocentrism. I mean, we've all seen a little kid do this, right? They shout an answer at the TV because they genuinely can't grasp that Dora the Explorer doesn't see the world from their exact same viewpoint. They think if they can see and hear something, Dora must be able to as well. Okay, moving on. From about 7 to 11 years old, our little scientist enters the concrete operational stage. And this is a big one because logic finally steps onto the scene, but with a little bit of a catch. Remember how we said kids in the last stage couldn't reverse things in their head? Well, look at this comparison. A pre-operational kid might know that 3 plus 2 equals 5. But if you ask them what 5 minus 2 is, they get stuck. Now, in the concrete operational stage, they get it. They understand reversibility, that those 2 equations are just 2 sides of the same coin. So their thinking gets way more organized and logical. They can finally arrange things in order, like from shortest to longest, and they master the huge milestone of conservation. But here's that catch I mentioned. All this awesome new logic is still tied to concrete physical things that can actually see and touch. So what exactly is this conservation thing? It's that classic experiment. You take two identical glasses with the same amount of water. You pour one into a tall, skinny glass. A younger kid will swear the tall glass has more water, but a child in the concrete operational stage gets it. They know that even though it looks different, the amount of water didn't actually change. And that brings us to the final expedition on our journey, starting around age 11 and heading right on into adulthood, the formal operational stage. This is where thinking really takes flight. Our little scientist graduates to a full-blown theorist because they can finally think abstractly. They can explore what-if scenarios, and they can reason through problems systematically, just like a real scientist testing a hypothesis. And this opens the door to grappling with huge ideas like morality, justice, and love. And funny enough, egocentrism actually makes a comeback here, but in a new form, that intense self-consciousness we all remember from our teenage years. So, let's just take a step back and look at the whole incredible journey we've just mapped out. We've literally traced the path of the human mind from a baby's first simple sensations all the way to an adolescent's ability to think about the universe itself. What Piaget gave us was a roadmap, a timeline that shows this clear, logical progression, from thinking based on action to thinking in symbols, then moving to concrete logic, and finally to abstract reasoning. Each stage builds directly on the one before it, creating the incredibly complex mind of an adult. But really, Piaget's work isn't just some dusty old theory in a textbook. It's a lens you can use every single day to understand the kids in your own life. The next time you see a toddler finally master peekaboo, you're literally watching object permanence being discovered. When you hear a teenager debating passionately about what's fair, that's formal operational thought in action. You're watching a little scientist hard at work. So I'll leave you with this question. How do you see these stages unfolding in the world around you?